Here's a message for you.
Today we're going to talk about the impact of annoying pop-up forms because everyone loves those things. So we're going to just jump right in. Pop-ups. Everyone knows about them. Everyone kind of hates them. This is the guy who created them. His name is Ethan Zuckerman. In 1990s, he was an advertising guy. They had a site called tripod.com and thought that this was a good way to advertise on their property. What he ended up saying was that he feels bad about it. We all know how it makes us feel. He acknowledges that pop-ups have ruined the internet, and he actually said, he teaches at MIT now, he said that he wishes that he never invented the pop-up because of how prevalent and misused and annoying it can be. We get to today, it's almost 30 years later, and it is just everywhere. Nike.com, eMarketer, essentially any site you're on, you're going to see a pop-up at some point. And it's there to grab your attention and hopefully get you to sign up, but we all know the feelings. We get the feels. We get there like, oh, this content's great. We're super happy to read this, and then boom. Oh, what the, like, where do I click out? Why are they doing this? You feel insulted that you got there and now they're trying to hoodwink you into something else, or tricked. You're frustrated that you can't get to the content that you were led there to read, or to maybe the thing you were supposed to buy, or you just were there to browse. You don't care that much about them. Ultimately, you just become instantly unengaged. It becomes a hurdle to reach what you are looking at. And unless you are really into that product, that brand, that content, the article, that video, it can increase your bounce rate significantly. So today what we're going to go through is a lot of the research along this. I went in and I probably spent 30 to 50 hours looking at really cool and happy white papers. This was the white paper. It was just text upon text. There was other professor articles written in journals, very similar. They point to the same thing. So looking into the research, they found if you have a sticky call out, it doesn't get your engagement that much. The animated one will grab your engagement, but it won't be that annoying. But on the extremely annoying side is the pop-up. We also see that it's not that useful. Actually, there's a negative correlation between usefulness and a pop-up with annoying, and a much higher correlation between a distraction or a creepiness factor with annoying with pop-ups. As we continued that research, Google ended up saying, hey, we don't like pop-ups either, and we're going to Google slap you if you use it too intrusively. We're going to penalize you, and your rankings are going to fall, so the search engine ranking. So essentially what they said was, if you're using a pop-up which covers the main content immediately after landing, or it's when you land, it's above the fold, appears as an interstitial, and you have to click down to see more, or you have to force somebody out of that interstitial before they see the content. Those are all things that will penalize you from Google's perspective as they crawl your site. I started getting into this mode of, why are pop-ups such a big thing still? Like, everyone points to how much they hate them. Google doesn't like them. I feel frustrated whenever I go to a site. I cannot go to a site really at all anymore without seeing an ad for a pop-up. And what I came across was that this feeling of being annoyed does not equal the ineffectiveness of that pop-up. We're going to get to how do you fix that annoying factor to make it even more effective. But the reason that people are still doing this is because they're getting signups. It is working. And so I really dug into, what's the research say about these signups? How do they make them work better? How do we not have a negative correlation with them or a negative feeling related to them? And the big thing is, how do I have a positive impact on the business, or the biz, as the cool kids say? Another reason, because we're really good emails, it's not so much on the biz, but on the readers. So what kind of value are we going to provide to the readers by giving them a pop-up? And that's what this whole talk is going to, or presentation is going to go into today. You may be familiar with Really Good Emails. We are a site that just collects emails on the web and categorizes them into certain things. For example, right here is our category on diversity and inclusion. But we didn't always look like this. What we actually looked like was this kind of site. We were much more of a blog in the early days, and this was our pop-up at the very beginning, just in the bottom left corner, kind of blown up. It was very simple. It just asked people to give us their email address, and we said it's a deal. And so we knew that this was going to make us the unicorn company that we wanted to be. And so we left it up, and we optimized that as much as we could. Different placements, different timings. We learned some things, and essentially landed on this design during that first iteration of our site. What you can see is that list growth was pretty predictable using this pop-up. So on the weekends, we kind of would flatten out, but then Monday through Friday, we'd kind of spike back up and then flatten out and then spike back up. Our pop-up was converting about 3.3% of our users. So every 100 users that came to the site, new users to the site, we get about 3% of those to sign up for our newsletter. And that made us happy. The design and wording didn't impact subscriber growth that much. Like we said, we did red, we did black, we did different words. No matter what we did, we only maybe optimized it by 0.1% impact. So we pretty much knew, hey, people are going to sign up no matter what. And we saw that people were doing that. People would actually write to us specifically and say, hey, my colleague or whatever told me about your newsletter. Where do I sign up, or can you sign me up? And we got dozens upon dozens of those every week. And so we're thinking, sweet. And really what we saw was that we thought we were the shiz with our email. And so we thought, well, why don't we just take this away? It's an annoyance. We hate it. Probably our users don't like it either. It frustrates them to see the content that they want to look at. And people are asking to join anyway, so what's going to be the hurt by taking it away? And this was a crazy idea. We'll just remove this pop-up from the site completely. And we were working on the new site, and so we thought we'll just get back to the pop-up when we go to the new site. And most bosses would be like, what are you doing? Like, this is driving this list. Like, we need this list to grow. And especially your sales agents are going to be saying, please keep it. This is giving us quality leads, or this is essentially making sure that we can sell a list to an advertiser. I hear that a lot with clients. Our list size is 2.5 million people, but they really don't ever go into the engagement rate because they're selling against that list size. So they just want to see that list size grow. To us, as a small business, we really didn't care. It's not going to impact us that much. We don't make that much money off this site anyways. So we wanted to give that site experience a better thing and just let people have what they wanted and join the newsletters if they thought it was good. And so we were on fire, we thought, literally, like we thought we were so cool. And what happened was there was more like a fire around us, and we were just saying, oh, no worry, this is fine. Because what we saw was when we took that newsletter pop-up away, our list actually started to decline. Our perspective was, well, people move on from company to company, they don't sign up again, and so that hard balance is unsubscribing them, or they just don't have time to read our emails. But that's fine, because the most engaged people are on the list still, even if it is decreasing. And ultimately, the organic growth, what our perspective was, the organic growth was not outpacing the unsubscribes. So this is our mantra. And what this told us in this screen is that we had become too used to this pop-up building up our own egos. We thought we were awesome and people were loving our stuff. But we often say build relationships and not lists. We were focused on this list growth and using that as our KPI for showing how healthy it was or how much people liked it, using tangentially these accolades that we were receiving to say, like, yeah, this is a great email that people want to read. But really, it wasn't building the relationships. When you took away that pop-up, there was a negative list growth, negative delta. So we knew that we had work to do. We had to get back and not look at these vanity metrics. We talk about this on Spam, we talk about this on our blog. List growth is a vanity metric, open rates is a vanity metric. What you're trying to do is you're trying to connect with those readers and keep them engaged throughout the life cycle with you. So what does that mean? What we ultimately realized was we had to change our perspective. Perspective went from people are just leaving because they are leaving their companies or they don't have time to a subset of our readers don't like our emails enough to stay subscribed. That was a painful thing to say out loud, but it really changed the conversation within the business to say, okay, we have not been able to see this because our pop-up has been obfuscating that negative effect on our letter. And so we decided we're going to fix it. So we kept the pop-up off. We didn't turn it on, but we went out and we asked people who unsubscribed what kind of feedback they could give us and why they unsubscribed. We emailed them personally. I spent Sundays going and looking at who had unsubscribed that week and just sending them personal email saying, hey, I noticed that you unsubscribed. This is really me. This is not an automated message. I saw that you worked at X company. I'd love to know more about what you're doing and why what you wanted to get out of the newsletter that you weren't, or what you thought was annoying, or maybe we offended you in some way. Can you get us that kind of feedback? Really good emails is we try not to offend, but our brand voice is a little raw at times, and so we've learned actually through this feedback that there are things that we can say better, and so we have corrected that. And what we did is around the 13th September last year, we made enough changes that we weren't seeing a decline anymore, and that actually we were seeing an uptick in organic subscribers. So people that were subscribing because their colleagues were telling them to, or they're hitting that newsletter link on our site and joining that way. And so we thought, okay, this is perfect. We've got pretty much our control now. So we can see week upon week the organic growth, and we can predict essentially how many visitors will convert to that newsletter based on the visitors of that week or that month. And so to me, this is really strong information. So we can go in and we can say, sweet, what we're doing in our newsletter is actually engaging enough that people are talking about it and that they want to join. They're searching this out. And then we can add fuel to the fire with pop-up and make that experience even better. So this is the positive impact on the business. The positive impact isn't the list growth. The positive impact is now creating this relationship with those readers. And if we had the pop-up up on our site continuously, we probably wouldn't have ever looked at it this way. And so we are now creating this awesome relationship with people that come to the site that we can talk to and get their perspective on what they want to learn and read and make those newsletters better so that they can tell their friends more and spread that newsletter even more. So what they're good for are people that are likely to engage. Like this is the business aspect of what a pop-up is. Like when somebody comes to your site and they already want to engage, they already want to buy what you're looking at, they want to get your service, they want to read that article, they're coming because they're interested. And the engaged individual is much more likely to sign up for a newsletter or an email than an unengaged individual. The emphasis on the value proposition is really just to help you clearly convey the message to your readers that like this is what you provide. So if you're a shoe company, that you could use a pop-up to say like our soles are made by recycled products. Or a service company, you say we donate 10% of our hours towards community service. When somebody is engaged, to hit them with an additional proposition that they aren't going to see in an article or on that product page, just to reemphasize who you are and what you're doing. Also, you can make that tailored to that individual. So if they are looking at certain type of products or certain type of articles or topics, that you can use that to pop up to emphasize the proposition of that topic, product, etc. You can increase your retargeting efforts. So if people we're going to hit on this pretty fully in the next bullet points and slides, but essentially what you're trying to do is show pop to people that are clicking from certain channels so that you can decrease your ad spend other places, because we all know that Facebook and Google are expensive. If you're spending a good amount of money segmenting your users there to bring them in, this is a very cheap way to make sure that you get their information, so you are controlling your own list rather than beholden to Facebook or Google and paying them every time to get those people to your site. And then alerting new information. This is not one that I really thought of until lately with COVID and everything going on in the world and injustices and civil rights and everything. But a pop-up can definitely help with alerting individuals that you're closed for a certain reason or for a certain time, what your COVID operating procedures, and you can remind them of why you're doing those things, again, back to your value proposition using that pop-up. So really what a pop-up can do, back to that retargeting, is focus on your acquisition channels. While I was doing some more research, I found this case study on Cocoa Floss. I don't know if you guys know about them. They're carried in Target and a few other places. They're essentially like this coconut flavored dental floss. And they send you floss every week or every month, or how much you go through floss. It's all up to you how much you consume your own floss. But they did a ton of targeting on Facebook and paid a lot of money for those users. And what they found was that by targeting specifically based on segmentation of their campaigns, they were able to decrease their acquisition costs by 25%. So they had different campaigns targeted to different users, maybe your middle class buyers in certain regions, or lower class, or more likely to use a coupon code segmentation. And what they were able to do is change that pop-up information based on that segmentation. So here, this pop-up was get 15% off your cart and using Get Flossy, and they could attribute using that coupon code because of this pop-up back to that segment and show which segments from Facebook or AdWords give them the most ROI. And then they could go double down on Facebook again and get more sales that way. And what I found interesting was on this pop-up research was that they were using this pop-up to get them quickly to the sale. They weren't using this pop-up to say, give me your email address so I can give you this 15% off. They were omitting that friction instantly and saying, here's your coupon code, use it. And then when you use it, we'll use that information to retarget to you later. And the mindset of just what's in it for the reader here, or what's in it for the user or the purchaser, that pop-up needs to serve them. When you say, like, give us your email address, you may be actually creating some more friction with that individual than just having them complete the goal that you're looking for, and then hopefully extracting the information from that goal event. So again, it's a positive impact on the readers. And what we're trying to do is get this negative feeling of feeling nagged to get this positive feeling of feeling nudged. And if you look at how those words, I don't know if you're an English speaker, but nagged is like this irritating individual who kind of like pokes you and is annoying and is continuously like urging you to do something. Whereas a nudge is a gentle prod, is the definition that I found, and is to draw someone's attention without annoyance. And that is what we're trying to shift this pop-up mentality is, don't be a nagger, be a nudger. And how do you get that nudging to impact your business or impact it positively than impact it negatively? Went further down the research to see, like, where does this exist? Like, what are we going to do to nudge people rather than to annoy them? And what are some friction points that we can remove to increase conversion rate? So this is some research done by Sleeknote. They went through and they went through 20 million pop-up views, and they omitted the campaigns that had less than 2,000 views to make sure they were statistically valid. And what they found was a ton of research that we'll go through in the next few slides. But if you include an image in your pop-up, that increases your conversion rate by 83% compared to no image. So the average conversion rate is still around 3.8%, which is, what we had on our site. Without an image will ultimately or may hurt your pop-up conversion rate as well. The next one is using countdown timers, and individuals or companies that use countdown timers within their pop-ups saw 112% increase in conversion rate than those that don't. Now, I'm not saying throw a pop-up banner or and then throw a countdown timer like every time you have a pop-up banner. That's just going to be annoying and it doesn't serve the user. So if it is relevant, like a sale is ending tomorrow, not a sale is ending in 29 days, or the webinar is happening in a day or two, that's a good way of using a countdown timer. Again, what's the value back to the user? You don't want to feel schemy or build too much urgency into what they're doing. The other elements that we're looking at was converting people at the number of input fields. How many boxes are you presenting in that pop-up is what you're looking for here. And what they found was you can have insert email address and then a CTA, but they found that 2 form fields are actually convert better than 1 form field. So that might be your email address and your name, and then the CTA button. Once you get to 3, like name, email, phone number, name, email, company, name, email, address, it drops significantly from that. So the best practice in this case would be to stick to 1 or 2. 3.2 versus 3.3 isn't that big of a difference, but there is a slight better conversion rate for 2 input fields. Then the other one was 76% of subscribers input more information when asked to do so in a 2-step process. So this is win a pair of sneakers, give me your email address, and then enrich that data by asking a follow-up in that pop-up. Do you like this brand or that brand? Are you interested in one of these few things? Never give too many options because you don't want to give choice paralysis. You can enrich more information on that subscriber based on just this flow. And 76% of subscribers actually end up clicking the first pop-up will complete the second pop-up. So that's just another good way to enrich that. And as we talk about personalization and individualization, having the more information, this is a great way to tack on maybe something that they haven't gone to yet, maybe a category they haven't visited or a product they haven't purchased yet. This can give you information on how to target them in the future. But there is a dark element here, a dark pattern. and that is this win a pair of sneakers. Maybe that's a cool thing to do, but what you're going to see is that you're going to get a lot of signups, and it's going to be a shot in the arm for your list growth, and your boss is going to be like, good job, you just raised our list size by 35%. But what you may see is that after the giveaway's done, that you have all those people unsubscribed, or your open rate, again, this is a vanity metric, but your open to click rate has dropped significantly because the people who didn't win or are not seeing that prize in their inbox just don't care. So some other dark elements and dark patterns not to do. So you don't want to give a pop-up that is unclickable. You don't want to force them to click on an element inside the pop-up. Let them click outside the pop-up and just see what they're reading. You don't want to shame them for not entering. So like, no, I don't like money and I'm a bad person was the example I came up with here. But I see this all the time. People say that, like, there's always a yes, I want this, or a no, I don't like this, and thus get me out of here. Don't shame them. There's this study that Freakonomics did based on NGOs that were shaming their donors to say, like, help this child in Africa, and if you don't, you're a bad person, or you won't, essentially something like that. What they found was that negatively impacted their donorship in the long run. So they may have gotten a little bit here and there right up front, but those donors didn't contribute long term. And essentially that's the same thing for email readers. You may get one or two right off the bat, but these people may feel like the value wasn't there, and they'll just become unengaged. And then the last one is this bait and switch offer, which is like, if you're promising them something like get $5, and they give you their email address and you send them an email, but really that $5 is $5 after their next purchase, or $5 when you refer a friend. That's a really bad tactic, and you'll see a lot of negative impact on that list and your customer base in the long run as well. So just some things to call out. Now back to the research. Pop-ups that show 8 seconds were converted better than pop-ups that were showing before then or after then. So it seems like 8 seconds is a good place based on the research to give a pop-up. That also correlates with scroll length. So if you have a pop-up triggered based on how far someone gets down on an article or on the page or into a video, around 35% was the sweet spot to trigger that pop-up from jumping in. This is our current pop-up. So after we did some elements, again, this is the cobbler's dilemma here, where we've done all this research over the last few weeks and month for this presentation, because it's been on my mind as I look at our pop-up, thinking, is this the best thing that we can do? Do as we say here, not do as we do, because we're making changes in the next couple months to make this much more enjoyable. But one of the things I wanted to highlight was just the copy is really important. And for us, we didn't find a lot of differences when we were doing copy edits in our prior version of our site with the earlier version that you saw, mostly because we had kind of come hard on our brand from the get-go. If you're just saying something like save 20%, enter your email address now, that may not be that great of a value proposition. It may not convey your brand. It may not really engage the reader thinking, well, after 20%, what am I going to do with this email address? And so what we do is we essentially say, sorry for being an asshole and interrupting that experience, but this only does trigger if you are not logged in to the site. We will trigger this for new users, but if you're logged in to really get emails, you won't see this ever. And then we also have this little tick box there for GDPR compliance to say that we'll track your activity to make sure that we can make your emails better. But we use some copy in here, like email, using the example of geocities.com, just to reemphasize our brand messaging and wording. And one of the other cool examples I found was from Neil Patel. And he says, from aha to oh shit, I'm sharing everything on my journey to 100,000 monthly visitors. I'm learning a lot, and so will you. That I'm going to learn a lot, and so will you is a really strong value, that you're going to learn something and continuously by his email address, by inputting your email into this form. It also points to this 100,000 monthly visitors. Like, this is a popular site, this is a popular newsletter, and so if this is the first time visiting, you'll know that other people read this too and they enjoy it. That's something you can play with in your own. The other one that we found was this location. So in the first version, we use this corner, and after looking at the research, I found out that the corner element is like the worst place to put your pop-up. This is a little this is very influenced by a conversion rate factor, not really long-term relationship factor. But essentially what you're trying to do is give a call out to this individual. And if you are doing the right thing by giving them a value proposition and emphasizing your brand, then you should probably see better rates than they are giving here. But a full screen takeover gives about a 7%. A center one gives about 5%, fixed banner 2%, and that corner is around 1%. Again, what we're trying to emphasize here is that it's not about the position, although the position does impact those signups and those conversion rates. It's about really getting that pop-up in relationship and in context of that experience. And so if somebody is searching through your site for hats and they start to scroll up and that exit intent, maybe that full screen is a great time to do it. You say, oh, we saw that you were looking at hats. Maybe here are some different versions, or maybe we can send you some more information on why we make hats. That full screen experience is probably perfect in that example. Nike does that same thing. So Nike doesn't hit you with a pop-up right when you land on their page, but they actually look at intent triggers. So if you hit certain categories, or if you go to the browser or scroll up to the browser, they're going to hit you with the full screen environment, and those work really well. Some other things that you can do is when someone clicks play a video from a button, but they're maybe not logged in, or they're not a user, maybe there's an interstitial there before the video plays to say like, hey, we saw that you wanted to see this more, go ahead and give us your email address. Wistia has a pretty good plugin for that, or import that form before the video plays or during the video. That will probably convert a little bit better. Again, just some things to think about there. And what we really want to emphasize here is that we want to build relationships and we're not building lists. So going through all this design elements and positioning, timing, copywriting, social proof, those are all really, really strong things to help your conversion rate. But if you are only looking on that list growth element, it's not a good way to grow a subscription base. And recently, Morning Brew just announced that they get over 1 million daily opens to their email newsletter. And the reason is because their content is just so freaking good. People want to read it. They want to see what's there. Yes, they do some really good things to make sure that you sign up for their emails, and they have a great referral program. But what is really important is that you are driving real value to those readers, and that you're building a relationship with them, because that's going to impact your business and their lives much better than just these bait and switch quick tactics shot in the arm to get this from 10,000 to 30,000 or 50,000 to 100,000 list size. Another thing about lists is that ESPs sometimes will push that a pop-up is the best thing to do to grow your list, because that is a billable thing for them. So from getting you from 100,000 to 200,000, and it doesn't impact your engagement or your click-through rates or your lifetime value, they don't really mind. Well, maybe they do, because it'll impact maybe their unsubscribed and spam rates in the long run. But they also get billed on how big your list size is. And so again, you don't have to worry about how big this list is that's growing from these pop-ups, but really to understand, how does this pop-up add fuel to what you're already doing well, and trying to bring that context to the individual when they're looking for it, and to remind them of certain elements that you can bring to that relationship that they may not see in that first interaction or second interaction. So with that, I'm not a professional pop-up maker here, but do we have any questions, Lauren? Have you seen anything that we can get to on the side panel?
This is kind of a really good email specific question. So I'm interested in your take on this, and how we might be able to get some other ideas out for the attendees in terms of how you have grown your subscriber list outside of using a pop-up. Or is that any sort of initiative that your team has taken to get that awareness out there? Or have you really tried to kind of rely on some of that organic word of mouth recommendation-based awareness?
Yeah, we still see a good amount of word of mouth to grow in that list. Really, that retargeting factor from Facebook to the site is a really good way of using pop-ups and making sure that you're targeting the right users in the right segment for the right reasons. One of the ways that we can target individuals outside of the site and not with a pop-up is also through webinars and aligning with what they want. That you can do that on Facebook or Eventbrite or whatever, and use those users to contribute to the volume that you send out. And that's a really good also way to solidify your relationship with that individual, to show the value up front and then say, hey, we're going to email you on the back end. And much like Litmus Live today, like you may have signed up to to hear me speak or hear others speak, and hopefully you'll see that value and say like, hey, you know, Litmus actually has some stuff going on for them here. Let's go ahead and continue to hear from them throughout the year until the next Litmus Live. So webinars work really well and referral programs work. We use a lot of word of mouth referral, but there are explicit referral programs like the Hustle or Morning Brew or the Skim have kind of grown their size because of that referral program. There are ways to game that if you do it the wrong way, right? So if you have some really cool prizes and you say like, hey, for the next 10 people you refer, we'll give you a free water bottle or something, I can go and create 10 fake email addresses automatically and game that, and those 9 extra email addresses that I just faked won't have any engagement whatsoever. There's a cautionary tale to use prizes for any of these pop-ups or referrals.
We've had a couple of questions come in about exit intent pop-ups. Maybe some thoughts on that, or things that you might have found in your research that could maybe provide some inspiration or some tips for people who might be considering that.
What I found, it depends on how much engagement you had before. So if someone is clicking through the site, they're going from category to category or article to article, and then they go to exit and they aren't a logged in user, or they didn't come from an email, or they didn't come from a segment that you already know who they are, that pop-up for the exit is very strong. You can typically get a really good conversion rate off of those individuals, because they have given you their time and they feel like that's of value to them in the future. An exit intent, when somebody lands on the site and is only there for maybe 5 to 10 seconds and leaves, that's not going to help. That's more like, hey, wait, I'm right here. Can you guys like give me something? I'll give you something. Please stay. That's not good. So there's also elements where the exit intent actually only triggers based on certain pixels near the top. So if you're going to the back button, because you're probably going to look at a different product, they don't do a pop-up. But if you're more like on the middle right area, maybe to type in something else in the browser, they will do a pop-up. So there are some cool tricks there that I found as we were doing this.
We had a question come in about whether or not you were able to find data on how many people, or the percentage of people that use their real name when opting in for emails through pop-ups. And I think it gets back to some of that, hey, I can create 10 email addresses and come up with 10 different names to get whatever you're promising me. So were you able to find any data on that?
No, but we've seen stuff like that with ourselves. We've done prizes where we see like Mike Nelson 1, Mike Nelson 2, Mike Nelson 3, just trying to game the system. Again, it goes back to the value. And so if the value is a prize, yeah, people are going to throw as many fake things as they can as possible. You'll also see a lot of lead forms, and we didn't talk about lead forms at all, but a lot of case studies are hidden by they're gated by these forms. They're not necessarily a pop-up form, but they're in on-page form. And personally, I always fake that information because I don't want to be contacted by a sales agent. I want to get the information first, and then if it's cool, I will engage with the company. And the company will benefit much better from me giving my email address after I've engaged that way than putting my information up front, feeling like, oh, that information really wasn't that useful, and then a sales agent wasting their time trying to get a hold of me through calling me or emailing me over and over and over again. Most of these times it goes into a certain automation, so there's really not additional time for a sales agent, because the smart way of doing it is just doing trigger events. But it does probably add to your cost structure for that ESP that you're using to do those triggers if you're at a certain scale of doing that. I think that's my perspective on that one.
Sure. And that ESP note that you mentioned too, that was something I definitely didn't consider, was how the list size, even if if acquisition is your goal, it could lead to maybe a little higher number on the next renewal invoice that you have with them. So that's definitely something to consider, and a piece that might be of interest to leadership and CMOs and CFOs. So, something that could, trickle up in the long run. But we did have a question about the white paper that you referenced, whether or not that's going to be something that is accessible, is open to the public. Maybe you could link out to that.
It wasn't that hard to find because it was referenced so many different places. And one of the other things I forgot to mention is a lot of the research around pop-ups are around pop-up ads. Mm-hmm. They're not about pop-up forms. And of course, pop-up ads are super annoying when you're like looking at something and it's like, buy this car now. And you're like, I'm looking at socks. I really don't care about a car. There is a lot of negative impact because of the ad aspect of a pop-up, that there wasn't a differentiation between, we looked at forms and we looked at ads. It was just like we looked at pop-ups. But we all know how we feel when we see a pop-up, and that's what I was trying to convey.
I think our brains are wired to see that even if we're on a site that we meant to go to, if you get that pop-up, it can still be that little bit of a trigger for when I was looking at a recipe, and again, I was getting pop-ups for things that were not related to those brownies that I wanted to make. So yeah.
There's another question here about the longevity and long-term study of engagement for users who come from different pop-ups versus sign-up locations. What we found was that if you were referred by organically, if you joined organically, those individuals for us stay much longer than somebody who's joined from a pop-up. Pop-ups we do have some long-term readers from pop-ups, so I won't say that they're always bad, but we've done a little bit of research on that, not a ton. But when we were looking at turning the pop-ups off, we looked at just those readers that were engaging and where they came from, either a pop-up or from organic source. The organic source did have a longer lifetime value to us than the pop-ups did.
Thank you again so much for taking some time with us this morning.
Thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. I hope you guys should check out the site, reallygoodemails.com, if you don't know us, or really good email, because Twitter doesn't let us have that many characters. Thanks for joining. Love you all.
Thanks again, Mike.
Thanks everyone. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.